And we're live. That was a little bit of a late start.
Hello.
But we had some beautiful dinner, and we're now ready to talk about some Path of Exile.
Whoop, whoop.
Hell yeah, man. So, to start it off, good evening, everyone. To start it off, this game is in early access, Path of Exile 2.
Okay. Early access.
I know, it still feels
Half
like a
the
full
game.
game. Yeah. It's really amazing how much content is in the game right now, but I guess just give your overall initial thoughts of the game. You've got, what, probably 30, 40 hours into it?
I think they're close to 40. I'm really enjoying it. The best way I can describe it is it's what I thought Diablo 4 was going to be.
Should have been.
Yeah. When I was getting all hyped for Diablo 4, this is what I was imagining. And I'm loving it. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm doing the monk build or monk class, and I'm doing the elementalist build, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. It is, I like the gear progression. I like the level up progression. I feel like each level, while it's not hugely important, I feel like I always have a goal I'm going towards on the massive skill tree, and then it's difficult enough, but there's never a point where I feel like it's impossible. At least I feel like I haven't gone to a place, granted, where I'm under-leveled. I've gone in where it's recommending my level, but that scales, right?
Yeah.
So
well, not real. No.
No?
Whatever
Okay.
the zone, it scales progressively through the game, but the zone has a monster level rating.
Yeah. So I haven't felt like there's been any point where it was too hard. I felt like it was just hard enough, and I think I saw online some people compare it it's the Dark Souls of ARPGs. I think there is similarities, and I do think with the role added, there is a lot of similarities, especially in the boss fights. They are really, some of them are really difficult, some are really cheesecake easy, but I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm having fun playing with Billy. Billy's already, end game world tier. No, but he's all statted out. I have good equipment, I feel like. I do have to say, though, out of the only time I've ever gotten, are they exotics? What are they called? The orange ones?
Uniques.
Uniques. I've only gotten one unique, except for with you guys. One we got them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I've never.
Rolls.
Yeah. So those are pretty rare.
Yeah.
I imagine, are they more plenty in endgame, or not really?
You have, the end game content, just because of the nature of what it is, where you're pushing higher level monsters, so you're going to be pushing more rares, and they just have a higher loot table. So I think they do roll more common, but I think I might have gotten over the course of I have 100 hours in the game. I probably have gotten 12 uniques, maybe 15. I don't know. I bought the premium unique tab, and so I just throw them all in there, building out my collection, so that's kind of fun.
I think so. The only before Billy goes on his big Word document, I have. If I had to think of any complaints, I know it's early access, it would probably be respecking. Because I feel like right now, there's been moments in my playthrough where I'll realize that I'm like, oh, I need more mana. I've been, somehow I missed out on leveling up to my mana, and you get the skill gems, which when you upgrade it upgrades how much mana it uses, and then so you might find yourself kind of screwed, and respecking is really expensive. And I feel like in a game with as many skills as you have, and as many, as in-depth that skill tree is, I feel like it should be free, in my opinion, or it should be, there need to be some other system to it, because I don't want to respec. I'm scared to respec, but I feel like at certain points I need to, because I didn't know, going through the skill tree, I didn't know I was setting myself up for failure. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily failure, but I was working against myself in almost a way.
Well, because it was what was working, like you said. Now you level up your skill gem. It uses 10% more mana, and all of a sudden, whoa, now I'm having an issue spamming this skill that I wasn't before.
Yeah.
As of 3 p.m. today, they rolled out a patch. They nerfed the cost of respecking
Oh, really?
by
Wow.
over 50%.
All right.
Somewhere like 50%, somewhere around that. I have not played with it. I took my dog for a walk, and then we went and got dinner, so I have not checked it out. But apparently, they in their patch notes, they said they nerfed it heavily.
Nice. Okay. Well, so maybe my complaint's gone.
Yeah, I think, well, they really listened to the player base. They nerfed a few of the cast on crit skills that people were loving early game. And when they did that, bricked a lot of people's builds, and then they didn't have the gold to then respec out of it.
Yeah.
So sometimes some people felt, and it wasn't that bad. Okay, I'll get into that whole thing through when I provide my breakdown. I was on a cast on crit build, Ice Sork, and my build was nerfed. It was nerfed in the sense that my clear speed got slower. But boss damage and everything was untouched. So
Okay.
I was able to make great progression, and it just was a little bit slower, which I actually, for whatever reason, I didn't mind. It felt so weird. In Diablo, I don't know if it's because I had all the movement that I did, or I was like so dedicated to go as fast as you can, be as efficient as possible. But in this game, I almost feel like a different mindset where I don't mind exploring and I don't mind killing monsters. The gameplay loop is so much fun for me, and I really love my sorcerer right now. To where I don't really mind the slower pace, which is very uncanny for my personality when I start playing these games. So I think that really speaks volumes to the game, the quality of the game. But there was a big patch today where they changed a lot of that stuff. They also implemented that change that I talked to you about, where now you can teleport in a zone to the different checkpoints.
Oh, nice.
So now you can, if you need to backtrack for any reason, you could just click on it and you teleport.
Because some of those maps are huge.
Huge.
And there's no sprint. Roll is
roll slows you down.
Yeah. So it's not like you can just roll through it, so that's good.
Yeah, they made some phenomenal changes here.
Overall, before you start, I'll just say I recommend it to anybody who likes ARPGs, or like if you enjoyed Diablo 4, this, in my opinion, is a superior version of that. And I would recommend it to people to give it a try. Especially, so right now it's early access, and it does cost money to play. It costs, the basic package is $30.
Early access key is $30.
$30.
Yeah, which gives you $30 in-store credit.
Yeah.
Which you then end up using on, like, if you start really playing the game, you use on a stash tab anyway, and it's great.
So right now it's $30, but when it fully releases with all 6 acts, it's going to be free. And so, when it's free, I would say pick it up.
But the amount of content and like quality of game, and it's not, they don't really have a lot of, as far as, I don't know about PoE 1. I didn't play that game. I don't know how bad their microtransactions got, if you could just straight up, like buy exalted orbs or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if that became a thing in Path of Exile 1, but from what I've seen, their microtransactions consist of stash tabs, which is convenience, quality of life, which, create the problem, sell the solution, that whole thing. But it's
saver.
It's very invasive it's very non-invasive, excuse me. And then everything else is skins, from what I can tell. So it's not like you're not buying, higher rolls on the currencies and stuff like that. It's very, very faithful microtransaction shop in my opinion. So let me get into the full, I guess, breakdown here. And if you want to jump in at any point on any of these bullets, feel free to feel free to do so. Storyline. The atmosphere of this game really gave me that Souls-like vibe. Particularly the Act 1 boss. I really, really struggled with him, and I think that boss really made me fall in love with the game. Because there was this sense of progression, like I can beat him. I learned his. You basically fight this werewolf guy at the end of the Act 1 in the manor, and there's like fog that coalesces around the edge of the arena, and he turns into this wolf form, and he's jumping at you through the fog. And I had to learn his dialogue tied with his jump animation.
Audio cues.
Yes. And it ended up being an extremely satisfying fight to work through and earn my way through. And I didn't look up any build guides until after I had beaten the game effectively. So and by that I mean acts 1 through 3. After that, once I got into like acts 5 and 6, I started kind of looking at builds, and then it wasn't until true end game when I actually fully implemented a content creator's build.
And by acts 5 and 6, you mean hardcore?
Yeah, cruel mode acts 2 and 3, right? That's people are just calling it that, but there will actually be an act 4 and an act 5 and an act 6.
I would say story-wise, now I'm close to the ending. I haven't beat it yet. But I feel like Act 1 and 2, story-wise, as somebody who's, his story is really important to me, Acts 1 and 2 were good. I enjoyed the story. Act 3, it's starting to lose me a little bit, but not because it's bad, just I don't understand
what's happening.
Yeah, like I don't understand how this relates to what we were doing in the first 2 acts. I'm like, okay, we're following this creature, right, and this evil lady,
this beast,
and then all of a sudden now I'm in an Aztec temple, and I'm
time traveling.
I'm like, what? What?
Yeah.
So
I kind of feel the exact same way. I have yet to watch a video fully explaining.
Whereas the first and second act, I was following pretty well. It's like, okay, she went to the desert. We're in the desert. Yeah. Like, I'm following this thing. Like, obviously, we need to hunt it down and kill it. But then third act, I'm like, okay. What am I doing? Hooded one? What?
Show me the way.
And he's an angel. He's death?
He's like
he's
the husband of a god. Yeah, well, he is a god himself, but he's like the husband of some other god. And I don't know who she is, but we'll find out, I guess. But maybe if you played Path of Exile 1, maybe there's some ties. Yeah. I don't know. I've yet to watch a lore video. But the reason why I call it like a Souls-like is less about the gameplay. I think some of the boss fights definitely give me that feeling of, mechanic happening, dodge, very immersive in that regard. It's very fun to play. The boss fights, I think, are the best part of this game. They feel so diversified. If we reflect to, especially during the campaign, if we reflect to like Diablo 4, man, when you were doing dungeons, they had like 4 boss types at the beginning of the game. You were playing you'd be going through like the same archetypical dungeon layout. Then you get to the end boss, and it's like the same dude you fought 6 times.
I can't even remember anyone we fought.
Yeah, it was like I remember Ichabod or whatever. It's like a ice guy, and it was just they were so generic. They were so generic and not interesting.
Yeah,
this game, the bosses are the best part of this game. The campaign, each one feels unique. They don't feel like reskins of any. Like they all have their own mechanics. Well, very, very interesting.
And to top that off, all acts have different enemies. Like they're all different.
Every area practically wildly different character types that do have different movesets and stuff. It's the story really is, I think, where this game shines. And like I said, the reason why I think it's more of a Souls-like is because the storytelling, in my opinion, especially someone who's not going to sit there and listen to or read all the text that's happening, is driven by the boss fights, right? Like you walk into this arena and thematically you can kind of piece together what the hell's actually going on.
Yeah, you walk in, you're like, this lady's talking to this guy. Mm-hmm. She seems evil. Oh, she betrayed him. Oh.
Yep, exactly. And so that storytelling is sort of unveiled through the boss encounters, very similar to a Souls game. The gameplay, I think it's the best of any ARPG I've ever played. It's up there in terms of my favorite gameplay loops of all time.
What other ARPGs have you played?
Oh boy, it depends on what you want to consider ARPGs. I played Lost Ark. I've played Diablo 4. I tried Path of Exile 1 briefly. A couple others that you might consider, but when I think of an ARPG with that title, I think of things that are similar to Diablo, that style. But you can classify it action RPG. I mean, Jesus, you can throw anything into that category almost. The dodge button felt really, really great. It reminded me of like how the implementation of Diablo.
What do you think of iframes? Like it not having iframes?
I think it's fine for late game because you end up getting movement speed. You kind of build for movement speed, and it works. and so you can leverage that to sort of walk out of more things than maybe you could at base game.
Early
I
game.
do wish that it did give you iframes, but I also understand why it doesn't. It does give you that initial burst to get the hell out real quick, just that. But then the roll animation's hella slow, so it does feel a little clunky. Would I prefer it with actual iframes? Maybe, but I feel like it would cheese a lot of things in a certain way. Versus you have to sort of. The game wants you to use the mechanics of the game to beat it, not something that just makes you invincible for a few seconds.
Yeah.
I think because you will get hit by anything ground targeted, but projectiles you will avoid. So it's not everything. Basically, you'll still get hit by any of the red attacks. So like when you think of Act 1, that big... He kind of like splashes this big AoE hit zone. The guillotine that comes down, like you can't avoid those things if you're just dodging them. So I think it's a pretty appropriate implementation because you do dodge projectiles. Basically, makes you, from how I understand how it works, is it sort of makes you small, and so that projectiles
just
basically
goes over you.
miss you effectively. And but anything like ground targeted with the red unblockable or whatever, you need to figure that out. So I kind of see their design philosophy of that because it's like, hey, spec into movement speed and you'll be able to better handle those, those mechanics. The game felt really, really balanced in terms of the gameplay. I never felt like the pacing of it just felt so tight knit with where I was. I never felt like I had to go back and redo a zone just to get extra experience. It just kept pace so well, which I'm shocked with on early access that it did that. I mean, every zone, it was like I was leveling and then walking into the next room. And it wasn't like quests gave you a bunch of experience or anything like that. It's not how that game works.
No, it's enemies.
Yeah. So it was really interesting how well balanced that whole thing felt. I wanted to brag about the Forge fight for a second. This you fight like Mechtful or something like that. Mechtful, the Forge Master, something like that. And thematically, it's one of the coolest fights I've ever been a part of and experienced. You've made your way through this drowned city, and you're kind of discovering that there might be a time travel element to the storyline. And you go into this forge, like in the basement of this kind of spirit or energy, city or whatever, and the whole time, have you done the fight?
No.
You haven't done the fight. Well, spoilers here. So the whole time you're exploring this, you're hearing this loud like hammer hit something like metal. And it's just boom. But it's not like a high-pitched ting. It's this shaking sound. And you're going through and you're so lost in this maze, and everything sort of looks the same, and you're going like, what is even in this zone? Like, what the fuck am I doing here? This is so different from the Drowned City and Arrogat and stuff like that. Like, thematically, what the fuck is going on? And then you come across this bridge, and you see the Forge Master hitting the sidewall of this gold reservoir where it's the bottom of like the forge, and he's just banging. And your character makes a comment audibly like, oh, well, that's the sound of that noise, whatever. And you go and you get this checkpoint, and you're like, oh, shit, we're about to fight this guy. And it takes you into the bottom of a forge, which is like this channel. And so you don't have much room to escape. And he is talking to you while he's hitting it, and he finally breaks through when you reach the arena. And it starts oozing this molten gold from the forge, and he empowers himself from the gold. It says that in his name if you pay attention to it. So you want to lure him away from the gold. If you don't, he'll keep getting powered and you won't be able to beat the fight. Well, you will, but in my opinion, he's way harder because he goes back to like heal and I don't know, harden up or something. I don't know what he's boosting off of, but he comes out and his attacks are pretty basic. But thematically, you're in this channel, and it's flooding with this molten gold, which he's booning off of and becoming more powerful, and you have to fight him constantly, and he goes back every 1/3 of his health to go in there and power back up, and he unlocks like new abilities or whatever. And then in that channel there's live events going on sometimes. Not There'll be like a ritual altar in there. I don't know if that's a bug or something, but it was crazy because I used that to then get my mana pots back. Because when you're killing enemies, regular enemies, you can restore flasks and stuff like that. So you do this mini quick time event, but the whole time this thing's filling up, and the molten gold one-shots you if you touch it. So it's just filling up. So it's a DPS check to say like, are you going to be able to kill this guy or not? So you're racing against that, and he's just like got this awesome booming voice that he's constantly talking to you, like calling you out and stuff. And then you defeat him, and the gold stops from overspilling, and you loot his hammer or whatever. It is fucking awesome. I thought it was thematic because you're in this area. Like, it's such a stark difference from everything you've been doing in Act 3. Then you find this forge, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And you fight this boss, and it was just like that. It was pure cinema for me. I thought it was so much fun to play that boss fight. So kudos to them. I remember just going through it. I was getting my ass kicked by him. I ended up having to come back because he was just so powerful. But it was like, this is a really fun game. And this was Act 3 at the end of the game. Wasn't even part of the storyline. He's an optional boss.
Oh, it's a side mission?
Yeah, it's just like a side quest. And I got that much enjoyment out of it. I'm like, it reminded me of Elden Ring, where you're excited to go and explore because some of the side bosses are the most fun.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the loot. Loot for me is the weakest part of this game. I don't feel like I was getting 3 days. Well, okay, so I do. I'm doing. I don't know what the term is. They have all these PoE1 terms are in the game, but I'm playing basically by myself, but I will use the trading post to get items. There's game modes and playthroughs that you can do where I think it's like SSFS, where it's like solo self-found, where it's like you're playing by yourself and you only are using the items that you find yourself. Huh. But there's like, I don't really fully understand all the different game modes, or if that's actually like a thing you can click where it locks trade from you, or what. I haven't figured that out. But so I am trading or whatever. And up to 3 days ago, I was able to engage in the trading system and get decent loot for cheap and stuff like that. Recently, I think maybe by nature of just me being in the end game, the prices have ballooned through the roof. So the gear that I'm looking for is extraordinarily expensive. And so I'm really struggling because an item that I wanted went up from like 25 Exalted Orbs to 70 Exalted Orbs in a matter of like 2 days. Which it's like, if you got, for me at least, I'm going through maps right now. If I got 25 Exalted Orbs in a night, I'm like, yes! So it's like, how can I keep pace when it's tripling overnight, I got a couple really good pieces of gear that I sold, and I finally got the piece, but it felt tight. It felt like, man, I'm really having to scrap through shit to get to this. So I feel like I really have not had a big part of this game and ARPGs in general is rolling gear, right? You loot a base item, you identify it or whatever it is, and maybe you upgrade it to a rare, and you see what are the base stats, and it's like, ooh, 3 of those stat combinations are really nice. Let me roll, to get a 4th or a 5th option on it. That's really, really good. I haven't even had enough of the resources to even consider that. Like for me to roll on one item, I would be really putting a dent in my resource gain. And so I'd rather just buy the item that has those stats. Like if the option to get the item that has all those stats already is 1 Exalted Orb, and then the price to gamble for that item is 1 Exalted Orb, why would you gamble? Yeah. Right? And so I feel like the currency is a little weird in that game. And I know that it's still early access, so it's very minor, but that would be my feedback to GGG is to maybe really pay attention to where that stands. Especially mid-game. I felt like I didn't make any gearing changes until I got to maps. Like, I think I finished Act 3, and then I did all of Cruel with the same gear
Wow.
I don't think I made a single change. And I definitely didn't have the currency to go, oh, I'm going to try some new shit. Like, I was not there. So that was kind of annoying.
I would agree. I would say that loot pools and loot in general, right now the numbers feel so low. Like I was saying, the legendary, or what are they called?
Uniques.
Uniques. I only got one organically. And I'm in the last act of early access,
The
regular
last
mode.
mission of Act 3, yeah.
Yeah, and to me that doesn't feel right. I feel like I should have more, or I feel like, especially because how the game works is you're getting uniques for other classes. Like it's not just you, it's not just your class. You're getting uniques for like barbarian or something else. And to me, I've only gotten one.
Well, for me, I actually don't really want uniques unless they're the uber rares.
Yeah.
Uniques are really, they'll usually have like a very one-off buff that makes it very niche. And most uniques are sell for garbage loot on the trading post. But for me, it's like the rares.
The rares.
If I find a magic item that I really want to invest in, I couldn't even consider upgrading it to rare to be like, ooh, is this going to make my build better? I just didn't have the currency. I think I got like 2 exalted orbs my entire playthrough, which exalted orbs is how you add a stat modifier to a rare. So you just didn't. And now I know they made some changes. I guess now exalteds drop Act 1, so maybe that's been fixed. But when I went through it, it was tough goings. I was very cheap there.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been wearing pretty much the same. I have the same belt that I had in first act because I have not found a better belt.
Belts in particular, they just changed today in the patch because their belts, even at the highest tiers, no one had a 2 or 3 slot, or I guess some people had a 2 slot belt. You know, like for charms.
Yeah, for the charms.
Yeah. And so I'm in maps, I'm in the end game content, and I have a 1 slot belt still.
Yeah.
And so they totally flipped that. Apparently that was wrong or whatever. So they totally fixed that. And I guess at item level 23, belts will drop with 2 slots. And then some, I don't know, whatever does 3 slots, whatever. So, the belts in particular were absolutely trashed here. Disenchanting. Boy, I think I pissed away this is the problem early game was I wasn't really respecing because I really liked my Frost build that I was sort of falling into with Ice Nova and then later on Ice Wall, which I loved that skill. But I was disenchanting everything. I was picking up every blue, identifying it, and then disenchanting it. Disenchanting gives you 1. This is what's crazy. You could sell the blue for, I don't know, 400 gold or whatever.
Yeah.
And stack up gold reserve. Or you could disenchant it for 1 shard of transmutation or whatever it is. And then 10 of those shards is the 1 orb of transformation, which makes a regular item, a normal item, a white item, go to blue. Not to rare, to blue. So I would effectively take 4,000 gold worth of materials to then pick up an item that is effectively worthless because they drop everywhere.
Yeah.
It just seems like a shit system. I don't feel like the shards should even be in the game. If you're going to be disenchanting, you should just get the orbs. Because late game, you don't even pick up blues anymore. You just pick up only golds, pretty much. Unless maybe you're trying to target farm something very, very specific or whatever. But you don't even pick them up. So you would never disenchant. And then the blues are worth way more late game. Like I have 800 gold blues now when I go to pick them up. They're just... I would never disenchant that for something that I needed to then do 10 more times. You know, it's not worth 8,000 gold.
Yeah. I've been selling them.
Yeah. So that would be my recommendation is liquidate everything through selling and don't worry about the modifiers because you'll collect those. Enough of them drop on the ground that you shouldn't be doing the shards thing. So I don't really understand the whole disenchanting thing. It seems way out of tuned, way unbalanced. Like to see that get a lot better. Yeah, gold. Respecing's too expensive. They've fixed this, so I don't really need. I've talked about that enough already. So, but I will say people were freaking out saying, I guess let me go into the story of how I beat Act 2 Cruel. The cast on crit nerf happened, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go through and play this game, and when I get done with Acts 2, I'll start looking at maybe changing to lightning or fire or something, like whatever looks interesting to me. Well, I kept playing and I kept playing and I kept leveling, and it wasn't really hurting me. I ended up beating, I'm not even kidding you. It didn't feel slow or bad at all, so the people screaming like, oh, my build's shit now, because it's not. I was an ice sorcerer, and I beat Act 2 Cruel with 21 passive points unselected. So I mean, I wasn't over leveled or anything like that. I just didn't slot in 21 passive points. Now I probably got 6 from the books and stuff, these books of specialization. So I think I probably only leveled maybe, around 14, 15 times or whatever in that time. But I did this, and it was nice because I knew I was going to swap off of ice later on. And I knew I didn't probably have enough gold to do so. When I finally did, I did the full swap. I went from 150,000 gold to 2,000 gold. I had literally just enough gold to do the swap that I wanted to do. I'm so glad that they've nerfed that. So the people freaking out that like, oh, their build's total shit now. If that was true, then your build, newsflash, your build was total shit before. Because I was having no problem. And I wasn't using the trading post. Like, I was doing at that point, I didn't even know about the trading post. I was doing everything what I found.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have anything way overpowered by any means. So, zone design. I love the zone design. Everyone feels super unique, even as I'm pushing maps, which I'll get to later on. They feel so differentiated, and the enemy types feel fresh that I'm 100 hours in and it's not waning on me like, oh, this one I got to go through again.
My only complaint, but they fixed it, was that it was so big that if you needed to go back for some reason, it took forever. But now they have where you can go to the checkpoint. So that's fixed now. But that was my only complaint initially playing it, was like you would, because of how big they were, you'd go find this one entrance to like a zone, right? And then you'd have to go somewhere else, and then you'd have to go all the way back, and all the enemies are probably dead because you killed them unless you died, and so it's just
you're just backtracking.
You're just walking.
Which in Diablo's map design was shit because it was all based in dungeons, and it would have like legs. So you'd travel all the way down the leg, kill the rare enemy, and have to walk all the way back. This isn't like that. It feels
a lot of circles.
Yes. Feels very circular, which I love that design, and it's definitely like a maze. But I'd like to see. I love that you can travel between the checkpoints. I'd like to see a couple more checkpoints added to some of these maps,
or I mean, heck, give me a mount
or a mount to get to zoom. Like you can only use a mount. Yeah, I don't know how they would implement it, but a mount would be nice.
Because Diablo had a mount.
Yeah, and which felt good, too.
Yeah.
I like that. That horse, that was great.
So I'd say I'd want something like that.
Although
just so
you
I can
couldn't
zoom.
mount in a dungeon.
True, which I think should apply to this, too. But some of their dungeons are huge.
Yeah.
But I feel like in the dungeons in PoE, I didn't have the problem backtracking.
No.
Dungeons felt very much, it was like a funnel. Like, it was huge.
No matter what way you're going, if you're working your way to the back, you're going to end up going.
Yeah.
I agree with that. So, I think for me, for zones, I'd like to see more rare enemies just for that higher amount of loot.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like there was enough of them. Sometimes, you'd be exploring, you'd be killing a lot of the common enemy, but by the time my build was feeling really juiced, I was kind of just, one-tapping all the regular enemies. I was just like almost walking at full speed and clearing everything. I want to see more rares with different modifiers on them so I can clear them and collect their loot, because the rares are the ones that drop the interesting loot. And so
the good loot, yeah.
I'd like to see a little more density in that regard, especially on like when you're clearing maps. I almost would like to see what they did with Diablo 4's dungeons. A lot of the objectives in Diablo 4, you had to kill every monster. this could get really tedious if you forgot that one fucking room in a corner somewhere that you got to go backtrack to. What they ended up changing was when you had less than 50 monsters or some arbitrary number,
they would come find you.
They would spawn on. They would just like spawn on you. They would get moved onto you, and I love that mechanic because you weren't hunting them down. You could easily clear them. I'd like to see maybe an implementation of something like that where you could, at least they'd be moved closer to you. Or right now in maps, when you have less than 200 enemies on the map, you see the skull of where the bosses are, all the rare enemies are. And so you can make your way to them. But sometimes they're just so fucking far away. And the way that the map's designed, you have to walk all the way around.
No mount,
it's
no
like,
nothing. You're
oh, man, I got to go. Like, you searched every crevice and crack that whole way except for that one, and that's where the motherfucker is. You're like, damn it. I'm playing as a sorcerer. I'm having a great time. The build fantasy, or the power fantasy that I'm getting from this class is so amazing. The animations of the attack skills feel fresh and super alive and fun. I've played as an arc mage. I played as a spark mage. I played as a fire flame wall mage. I've been a frost bolt and ice wall mage. I've played as all the different types, and each one feels like you're imbuing that sorcery. And it's so much fun. I feel really good. I've rolled a witch and a ranger, and I couldn't really stand ranger because it just felt like I was shooting just an arrow, like pressing one button to fire an arrow. With sorcerer, not really the build that I'm doing now, because right now I'm just doing spark over and over and over again. But with my ice wall sorcerer and stuff, I would throw out these frost bolts, which would lay a trail of chill, slowing all enemies towards me. And then I would throw my ice wall down, which can be shattered. And then I would cold snap on one of my frost bolts that's slowly rolling across to make an explosion, which would then blow up my ice wall and create a bunch of projectiles and stuff like that. It was so much fun synergy. I felt like I was really playing the environment and playing my spells versus just when I was playing as a ranger, which I got all the way through Act 1 with. I just leveled it one night. I don't know why, because I heard it was really powerful. I just couldn't get into it. I literally felt like I was lightning arrow, lightning arrow, lightning arrow, lightning arrow, and it didn't feel the gameplay didn't feel diverse enough for me. And I typically like mage classes anyway, and the power fantasy of this is really hitting the spot, at least for me. So. I know you're playing as a monk.
I'm playing as a monk. I really like the monk. I'm an ice monk right now. I haven't gone into anything else, but the monk I'm building into. So I kind of went right off the bat. I was going ice, but then now I'm kind of course correcting to where I'm everything, because the elemental master ascendancy is like it. It is really dependent on you having each element on the enemy, like, and they buff each other and they do massive damage. So now I'm kind of going back towards, lightning and fire and trying to incorporate those, but it's pretty amazing. Like right now, so I haven't beat the Act 3. I can freeze a common enemy, like a normal grunt, in 2 hits. They're froze, like solid. And then I lay down my bell and I just fuck up people, bang, bang, bang. And so I'm having a lot of fun with it. I do think, and I know this was a problem that now I don't think it's a problem that like I messed up on. I don't think my knowledge of ARPGs is enough. I'm feeling like I need more survivability.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know how. Like, I don't know what I was supposed to do to make that better.
Well, I'll tell you when I'm done with this, I'll tell you what I've done to my build, and it's transformed
my
survivability.
Yeah, because it's like, I feel like, and this is, I'm tying to my inexperience with ARPGs, is I feel like I've decently leveled in survivability, in my opinion, by doing like the heal on kill and mana leech and, hit leech where you leech their health. But I don't know what else it wants from me. And like, so I feel like right now where I'm at, I'm kind of like, I'm looking at the skill tree and I'm like, I don't know what to do to increase that. I mean, I have other goals like there's this one that increased my
Energy shield.
elemental damage
Oh, okay.
by 10% each node. I'm like, fuck yeah, I want that. But I'm like, okay, I know that's good, but I should be prioritizing
need to
survivability.
survive.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know where I need to look at for this.
Yep.
But I'm really enjoying Monk, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think Monk is way better than Druid, and and what other class did I play? Druid
In D4.
in D4.
You played as a druid and
Did they have Rogue or Ranger?
you played as a rogue.
Rogue.
It was like their stabby class.
That's right. They had the knives and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm having much more fun with this one than I did with those. Just because I feel like the amount of abilities and skills I'm getting allows me to customize it enough. And when it comes to skills, I haven't felt like I've chosen a wrong one. I feel like each one works really well. Like I'm to the point where I'm like, fuck, I wish I could have more. Like, I want this. I had to sacrifice this one because I only have so many skill gem slots. I wanted to keep that one, so I'm really enjoying Monk. And I tried a mercenary. He was fun, kind of same thing as though you were saying with the Ranger. I made halfway through Act 1. It wasn't my playstyle.
Yeah.
It's very much, it's like I'm playing a shooter.
Every gameplay I've seen of Mercenary, it doesn't look fun.
Yeah,
it's like Grenadier, like boom, 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 boom. It's like what?
And so I like Monk. Monk is cool. The bell, to me, I know other people probably not, but the bell to me is like essential to the Monk class, and I didn't realize until I saw what it did. I was like, oh, you pretty much need this bell to fuck people up. I mean, you don't. I'm pretty sure there's classes that don't use the bell at all, but for me, I rely on it heavily. It's core to your build. Yeah.
Well, it's also cool thematically to play off of. It differentiates the gameplay a little bit.
Yeah.
It's fun. Because it looks cool, too.
I don't have... That's pretty much my only AoE thing. Like, otherwise, I have, like, cone attacks. Mm-hmm. So, like, it'll be a cone.
You, like, hit the ground.
Yeah, but I don't have anything that's AoE, whereas the bell, that's my AoE. So when you have those big mobs...
You can clear them quick.
That's what works for me, yeah.
Yep. For me, I felt like my next point is on uniques. I would have liked to see like a guaranteed drop of like a shitty unique, one per class. There's enough bosses in the first act where it would be cool, like when you walk through Clearfell and you fight that ice lady, right? Like one of the first bosses that you can kind of encounter. If she dropped a unique staff or some base unique that's not meant for endgame, but you could get that sense of like, oh my god, this is really good, and it applies to your build.
Yeah.
That's almost so you can use it for the majority of. You could probably. I'd love to see it where you could technically beat the game and be fine with, but then also it's just not statistically that good because sometimes you could find, like, I know this whole game is built around loot and stuff like that, but there's a lot of people who don't know what to look for in loot. That's a whole time investment to get into, like, why do I need these things in my build? And so it'd be nice to just give you a nice starter staff or, wand or whatever it is, all the crossbow, whatever, for all the basic quarterstaff for your monks and stuff, where you would get the loot and you could slot that in and almost like think about, okay, now I'm going to worry about my chest piece, like my weapon's good, but something to get that loot feeling rolling where you're like, yeah, I got this. Item. That's awesome.
The best experience I've ever had in a game with exotic loot or with legendary, like uniques, is Destiny. Their formula for dropping exotics and allowing you to acquire them, I feel like, so at first it even at first I felt like it was decent, but now it's the last time I played it's pretty common, or not common, but you can get exotics, and they still feel great, but it's not like I haven't seen one in 24 years. Yeah. So I feel like Destiny has a really good economy, and I would love to see that in this, especially knowing how many uniques there are. I would love to be, because when I see one, I get excited.
Yes.
But I haven't seen one. I've only seen one all game, besides the loot pools when we're playing multiplayer are crazy because we got like
Yeah, I don't know what the hell was going on. It felt like we were constantly getting uniques. But I totally am in agreement because when you see that orange item drop, you're like, oh yeah, and then it's some bulky, requires 100 strength thorns build, chest piece. You're like, what the fuck is this? But if I just had one unique item drop early game, that applied to my build, boy, that would feel really good. Just one. Because if you collect the first 5 and none of them are even relevant, then that whole feeling starts to go away once you get your 10th one. You're like, oh, what the fuck is this for nowadays?
Well, and I don't know how well it would work. I want to brainstorm this with you. I love the idea of Xur in Destiny. It's difficult to earn the currency, but you can buy exotics. Do you think that I would love to see that in this, where it's super difficult. I have to beat some hard ass bosses, but I earn this currency that I can then buy an exotic.
Well, exotics in that game are account bound, right? There's no trading, right? So
are they? I don't know.
In Destiny,
or in Destiny?
Yeah,
yeah, no.
You can't trade them in any way. You can't drop them on the ground or whatever. Well, in Path of Exile, you can just use the trading posts, right? And 90% of exotics are one Exalt Orb, which is basically they're giving it away.
Giving it away. Okay.
Yeah. So it's you could definitely, but then that doesn't make it feel good, right?
Yeah.
And I get why they exist because people come up with crazy builds and you need that exact item for that one wacky, weird thing that you're trying to do. Great. But, I just want that feeling like it doesn't hit you when a rare item drops. It hits you when that unique drops.
Well, and
so just if you had at least one experience where it was like, this is directly applicable and I'm slotting it in, and you could give that to me in the first act, that's what I think they need to do.
And they might change this. It sounds like they're constantly listening. But I want, in my opinion, in a game like this, a loot game, I want to, by the time I get to Act 6, I want to have multiple uniques that I can look at and be like, okay, this one, I can determine which one was good, and be able to choose. Whereas now I don't have any.
Right.
And how many do you have?
I've probably collected 12 to 15, and I'm using 2 of them, neither of which that I found. I had to buy them.
So it's like I feel like they need to up the drop rate maybe a little bit or something, because I feel like right now it feels like they don't exist to me. Like I don't have any on my monk right now.
Yeah, and the problem that they do is because uniques, there's not like a item level, I guess. There kind of is, but the whole point is that you find loot that you're never going to be best in slot geared, pretty much. You're going to sort of make it mold and get it to what you need, versus when you find a unique, you slot it and forget it, right? Like I found my amulet. I bought my amulet today for 60 exalted orbs. I'm never going to be looking for an amulet again. So I think that's the problem with uniques is when you slot it in, it's like, okay, I'm done with that now. And you're never going to, versus when you're doing the whole rare system, that's where you can get the stat combos that you want and all the stuff.
So but aren't uniques leveled as well?
Not really. So so I'll give you an example. Like the unique will be, plus 10% physical damage, 50% mana regen, 50% of the mana of the damage you take recoups as mana. So there's percentage modifiers that it's whether you're level 100 or level 2.
I feel like the jacket you gave me though, I out-leveled.
It no longer applied.
I was finding better stuff. It didn't. The numbers weren't increasing with it.
Yeah, there are tier rolls within stuff, but in general, I don't think uniques really roll with it. If something is plus 6 mana and then late game it's plus 60 mana, I don't know if that really applies to uniques. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
But in general, rare gear, unless you got it's the unique modifying line that makes uniques so valuable. Mm-hmm. It's not the stats on them. It's that one line that is I need that fucking item. For instance, my the amulet that I bought, I have a passive tree skill that I've spec'd into that completely converts my energy shield, which I had almost 3,000 of, to mana. So, but now I don't have an energy shield. But what this amulet does is converts a percentage of my mana as extra energy shield. So I convert my base energy shield to mana, which boosts my mana through the roof, which all my damage scales off of effectively. And then I have this amulet, which then allows me to still have an energy shield. So right now I have that, and then I'm spec'd into a skill called Mind Over Matter, which then says once my energy shield's depleted, right now it's at like 1,500 energy shield or whatever. I don't take damage in my health. It takes from my mana.
Oh.
So then I have 1,500 shield. I have 3,000 mana, in which my mana regeneration is 500 mana per second. So enemies have to be smacking me pretty good, and then I still have my health pool, which is 1,000, 1,500, or whatever it is. So I've got like 7,000 health just right there.
Damn.
That makes me really tanky. And I was going to get into this later, but I'm on a roll. I swapped off of a focus, which hits my damage pretty hard, honestly. It's been an adjustment. But I have a shield now. And the shield gives me 55, between the shield and my passive nodes, it gives me 55% chance to block attacks, just naturally. So like,
it's like my evasion.
Yes, exactly. And so with that much block and that much health pool and that much regen, the only times I'm dying is when I just get body blocked by enemies.
By like insta-kill.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and then the patch today, they got rid of a lot of the on-death effects where they explode and stuff like that. Thank God, nobody likes that shit. So,
especially with how many enemies
oh my God, you can't see anything. So they removed like almost all of them, they said, and reduced the crit damage of monsters and stuff like that. So I should be dying way less. So I'll get into that in a later section here. But big, I think uniques. There's some more to love there.
Yeah,
I think there's some that are just so clear as day better, and which you're always gonna have in a game. Like Diablo had the same thing with forget the helmet it was some fancy name for it that gave like +4 stats to everything. Which is just insane. But anyway, UI, I love the UI. I've seen it on controller as well. I don't know how they could make a game like this work on controller, but a couple of the streamers that I watch, other than inventory management, maybe, it works great on controller. And on PC, I'm really, really happy with it. One of my notes here they implemented today, which they gave you can only see the skills if you had a skill gem. Now they added a page where you can just go and see the skills.
Oh, thank you.
So that's huge. I'd love to see the passive tree suck still. Okay, that's wrong. I think the passive tree is sick. But it doesn't show you what your character, like a character panel of pre and post passive. Right? If I choose,
that would be nice, yeah.
If I choose a node that says 50% mana regen, what does that actually look like? What's my number now? I know I could do the calculation, but when I did a full respec, what the fuck is actually changing? How much energy shield do I have?
Yeah, I would love to see that.
So I would love to see a preview of like the actual changes you're doing. That would be my big feedback. But the passive tree node I think is amazing. It's so daunting when you first open it up. You're like, oh my God, it's really not bad when you're actually getting into it. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but the design, if like when you're doing fire nodes, it'll look like a little fire.
Yeah.
When you're doing like mana nodes, it'll look like a little energy symbol. It's like, wow, they did one for spear and they had a whole spear. And I'm like, this is actually really done well. And it's not as complicated as I originally thought and looked at. I mean, I got to like level 40 and hadn't really put much thought into it, and my build was working. Like I hadn't royally fucked it up. So, I wasn't following a build guide. Like I said, I was doing it on my own. And I also wasn't like, okay, my next 20 levels, I'm building this way. It's just like, oh, extra damage. I need that. Ooh, mana regen. I need that, So I was just kind of going along and doing it, and it worked. And I
feel like after, because level 40, I'm around there. I feel like after level 40, though, I think your experience in ARPGs and and like Guild Wars is helping you. Because for
time.
me, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with I'm realizing that I need survivability, but I don't know
How to spec into it.
I don't know how to spec into it because I felt like I was. And it's like I look at the other passives and I'm like, I don't.
Well, I had to learn that lesson hard because when I got into Cruel, again, my build was kind of so strong like organically defensively because I was freezing everything that I was getting one shot by everything. And I thought, oh, that's just how the game was designed. But then stupidly enough, like Act 2 or maybe even Act 3 Cruel, I opened up my character panel and actually looked at what my resistances were. I had negative cold and fire resistance and 21 unslotted, passive skills. So I was still making it through, but I was like, oh my God, this is bad. So I found gear and I kind of prioritized resistances. And I just remember going to the first zone and I'm like, oh my God, the game is a joke now. Because I'm tanking everything, like nothing is doing damage to me versus I was getting owned. So yeah, it's funny how it sort of builds differently. I actually didn't know about the block mechanic because I was going full int everything until I watched this video and I'm like, oh, block is a really cool mechanic. It just straight up is an organic block. Like it can block anything, just naturally. So if you stat into that, which is on your character sheet, you can have up to 75% block.
I have 70% evasion.
That's crazy. That's crazy. That's so much.
That's part of my survivabilities.
Yeah.
They aren't hitting me at all.
That's why your health never moves. See, when we were still playing together, I had no resistances.
Yeah.
So I'm like naked out there.
Now my health is like.
So yeah, I would recommend probably your evasion is 70, but I bet your resistances are pretty low. So when you do take damages, you're getting smacked. So yeah. Anyway, co-op, wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Like way better than Diablo 4's experience. That was so kind of buggy and quirky and resetting dungeons, and it was bad. It was a bad implementation based on the way gameplay is done in Diablo 4. In this game, it's like shocking how easy and great it works. You can both enter a zone at the same time or almost the same time, and you load into the same map. You're not in two different instances and stuff like that. The way it figures all that out, I don't know how Diablo 4 would constantly fuck that up, where you'd enter an instance and you didn't wait for the other person to load, so you were in your own copy.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal implementation, and co-op's really fun. I haven't tried couch co-op, but I imagine that would be pretty cool too.
Well, and crashes are great too because I mean they're not great. The way they handle them is really good for a early access. Like we had very few crashes, maybe only one or two, but one that did happen. It was only one of us. It would automatically put somebody else's party leader. And it was seamless. And then if the person booted back up fast enough, there was like a time frame where it would just automatically put them right back where they were. Like it wouldn't even, it was just like, yeah, okay. And I love that because that's one of the big things is, in a co-op session, if you freeze and then it takes you like 10 minutes to get back playing with your friends, it's like.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like that at all.
No.
It was really, really cool. In fact, I think I joined late on a couple quest items with you guys because I was doing something and I ended up creating the character and I was a couple levels down or whatever. I was able to join you guys with the active quest. I didn't need to go through the initial steps if you guys were on let's say the quest was 4 steps long. I didn't need to do the first 2 if you guys were already on the 3rd because I would join you in your instance and it would update to just say, okay, hey, do this step.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, wow, that's really nice. I don't have to retrace those steps because I wasn't in this instance. So, yeah, kudos to them. I for a game like this to have a polished co-op like that, I was like, there's a lot of things that they've thought through and delivered a really nice experience. Leveling, we already talked about this. I felt like it kept pace the whole time. I have yet, even now, to worry about what my level is. Waypoints. They're adding they're adding the checkpoints to be able to teleport to. I'd like to be able to fast travel if I'm out of combat. I don't know if they have that in the system or whatever. Without having to walk to a waypoint spot and then travel. That's kind of clunky. Yeah. I'd like to just open up the world map and go. But that is made easier now that I have my hideout, so it's like my home instance, because I can just I could if I have my if I've gone into an area now that I'm mapping, if I've gone into an area from my hideout, my home instance, if I click that portal, it'll take me back to my hideout, which then I have the waypoint right next to where I need to be, and I can travel anywhere. So it's less of an issue. But I still would like to be able to do that. I don't know if there's an out of combat system. I'd like to be able to just go wherever the hell I want to go without having to do that.
Yeah.
But NPCs, I like the NPC loot store, or their stock or whatever they have in inventory. I like Diablo. It was every hour, on the hour, it would resync new items. Right now, it's done every level. So for me, as a leveling, like it's kind of nice to be able to look at the stock and go, "Ooh, that's kind of interesting. I want to think about that. I want to think about buying that, and then go play in a couple zones, whatever, air zone or whatever, and go, you know what, I'm going to buy that before I level up here. Go and it's there. I like that. I'd like to see them consolidate systems such as salvaging, reforging, and the currency stuff. I don't feel like I want to walk to a different spot to do those things. I also think their salvage bench is like the most basic implementation. You basically talk to this bench. It loads up an icon. You click the icon, and then you click on the icon, or click on whatever gear you want to break down. It doesn't feel polished. It feels like there's a lot of work left to do. So I'd like to see those systems kind of consolidated and nicer. Again, this is made less annoying because of the hideouts that you have. You can literally drag and drop. I've seen so many people as I've traded for different items. You go into their hideouts. That's usually where they're waiting, where they've just moved everything as close as they can to each other. So it's super accessible. You can basically stand in one spot and click and do what you need to do. So I like that. Movement speed. I'd like to see boots just come with base movement speed. Without movement speed, you're walking. I mean, it's slow. And so maybe they like that design where when you finally do spec movement speed, it feels rewarding. But there's some of the bosses in Act 1, I guess you don't realize how defensive something as simple as movement speed can be because you can walk out of things that you couldn't before.
Yeah. Dodge bullet hell.
Yeah. And then finally, pacing. I felt like the pacing was really accurate. I didn't feel like sometimes in games it's you unlock that skill and all of a sudden things become way trivial. Like, oh wow, I finally got over the hurdle and now I'm smashing content. It felt very progressive the whole time. It felt like the areas that I was doing next and next and next kept pace, and the challenge and difficulty was still there. It didn't run away from me and all of a sudden I was a fucking god. It was always something that you were trying to slowly improve over time. So I was a big fan of the pacing. So, but anyway, that's my giant Word doc of topics to go through and discuss.
It's quite a bit.
Right at an hour too. Look at that.
Dang.
Any final thoughts on the game? I'm loving the game.
Yeah.
I'm loving the game.
I think it's a great game. Final thoughts.
You said you've committed to beating the campaign. You don't know if you'll go through it on Cruel yet.
Yeah. I would say
will you come back to the game when it full launches to
Probably.
do Acts 4, 5, and 6, you think?
Yeah, probably.
There you go.
Like if I can get my survivability up right now, and then because damage-wise, I feel like I'm doing good. But my survivability, I need to work on. That's I'm like, oh, fuck, I died. Oh, fuck, I died. Now that I'm thinking on it, I kind of think wisdom scrolls or whatever they're called
Scrolls of Wisdom, yeah.
are pointless.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, why would but I'm actually a fan of how they designed it. The reason being is when you go to a town, you've already fully reset. So you're there to sell or whatever. So you can go and you talk to the guy and you identify everything. And then you can sell from there. I like the Scrolls of Wisdom because in the field, I don't have to go back to town. I can pick up a wand, identify it, realize the stats are shit and drop it.
Why not just show me the stats?
Oh, why?
Why
is it? Why identify anything?
Yeah.
okay. Let me put on my hat here. I don't know how. Okay, let me put on my hat here.
Okay.
And I think that this is maybe a problem. I don't know if this was in PoE 1. I don't remember. I think unidentifieds were a thing in the game. There's that juice that you get when you identify something that has good stats. You're like, oh, people play with loot filters in this game, and if everything came identified, effectively you could just filter out anything that didn't have the stats that you wanted. So you wouldn't even be shown, like, I hate this argument now that I'm spelling it out, because it's like, well, that's what you would only want anyway. Why go through the step? I kind of agree with you. I kind of do agree with you. Why is there even an identification process? I agree with you.
Yeah. But that just popped in my head. But overall, I think game is great. I'd recommend it. If you're a fan of Diablo 4 or ARPGs, get early access. If you aren't, wait for probably the full release, because it's going to be free and there's less, investment of risk. But as of right now, if you had any fun with Diablo 4 or anything like that, I would recommend this, because I think to me, it is what Diablo should be. And I'm sure at some point Diablo was like this. Like, I'm sure, because I feel like
Diablo 2, I guess, is like the standard.
Is the golden standard. Probably, Path of Exiles looked, they probably communicate in some way. Like, they look at Diablo and take some stuff. Diablo looks at them. So yeah, I'd recommend it. And I'd say it's a lot of fun. When they full release, are you going to start a new class with the new classes that come?
No, I'm going to play. Well, it depends on what gets announced, but I'm loving Sork.
I'm same as you. I'm not a multi-classer. Like, I don't, as much as I do it sometimes, but that's just because I can't make up my mind in certain games. I don't want to have multiple characters because I don't like having to redo the leveling process. Yeah. Especially in a game like this. Like Cyberpunk, where there's a story, I'll do the re-leveling process because I'm also enjoying the story as well. I'm getting to experience it, make different choices. This one, it's the same story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I'll play anyone else. I didn't see anybody that intrigued me. So I think I might just stick with Monk.
I wouldn't mind playing through Acts 1 through 3 again on a fresh new character, because I think at this point, I've done it twice. I could probably zoom through it in, I don't know, 6-7 hours, so it's not really a barrier to entry. And I think when they launch the game, they'll probably there'll be a reason to create a new character versus your old one, especially because if you want to play true Act 4, not Act 1 cruel, I wouldn't want to go in there with like a level 90 Stormweaver and just one click everything. Like, that would be very unsatisfying. So I imagine I'm going to have to level a new character anyway. But what I hope they don't do is reset the economy.
Ugh.
If they just like wipe all your items and it's like a fresh go.
I hate that.
I don't think they will, because this isn't called a beta. If it was a beta, then yeah, this is early access. So in my mind, I'm playing the game. I paid to play it early. So we'll see what they end up doing. They haven't really commented too much on it, but we'll see. So anyway, I'd recommend this game to anybody who enjoys challenging boss fights. If you like really unique, really fun, intriguing boss fights, I would recommend buying this game. Also, I know if you're at all intimidated like I was by Path of Exile 1, I think this game has done wonders to make it way more approachable.
Yeah, as somebody who's not a big ARPG player, I feel like the accessibility is simple. Or not simple, but it's approachable.
Yeah, approachable. There you go. Yeah, it's the passive tree. When you open that up, you're like, oh fuck. But like I said, once I was like 10 levels in, I'm like, oh, this is not bad at all, actually. And because it branches out, you can kind of feel like you're making your own path.
Yeah.
And depending on what class you are, you start on a certain side, so it doesn't. I guess if they didn't start you in a certain spot, then it would be fucked.
Yeah, if you're like,
You're like, what? But it starts you off with like, okay, hey, I'm a Sork. You can go spell damage or energy shield, What was your first two? Like, I would imagine like evasion things or, maybe energy shield too if you want to go defensive and melee damage, like projectile speed or something. Yeah, attack damage, whatever. Right? So it's like they got you started on a path and you say, okay, left or right. And then once you start working down that, it's kind of clear to you to go, oh, okay, I kind of figured it out. And then by the time you're already 30, 40 hours into the game, you're like, okay, I actually kind of know what I'm doing. I think they've really nailed that part of it because PoE 1 was not approachable. I remember diving into that game and just going, what the fuck am I looking at? And nothing made sense. Yes. The zones didn't make sense. I didn't even know how to waypoint really. And I didn't know why it kept clear. Like this game is just way more welcoming to new players. So
I agree.
Anyway, Dylan, where can people find us?
They can find us right here on YouTube, where we stream every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube. Come chat with us. Come join us live. We enjoy talking to you guys, seeing you guys, and come catch us on the next episode.
That's right. And remember, with a good KD, you get the dub. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.